Hi, and welcome back to your favorite podcast. I'm really excited that you're here. Today, I want to talk about this video that has gone viral on social media for all the wrong reasons. And it's something that's really toxic. I'm talking physically toxic. So let's jump right in. Hello, and welcome back to your favorite podcast, Spilling the Tea Leaves. My name is Michelle. I am a crystal Reiki master. I'm also a spiritual teacher and advisor. And this podcast is all about crystals and spiritual awakening. We are demystifying the mysticism. So grab your cup of tea or coffee or water or whatever you have handy, and let's jump right into today's episode. I am so excited. So if you're watching me on YouTube right now, sorry, I am trying a new setup. I have changed offices. I have this camera that I'm not fully committed to. It's simply easier because I can just plug it into the computer. Anyway, stuff that you don't have to worry about. So you may or may not see my face on YouTube. If you are, sorry, I might change my mind and just do like a whole just blank screen. Anyways, just a couple of notes before we begin. I am going to be closing any private sessions and group sessions starting December 1st through January 1st. I am going back to the States and I'm super excited because I get to see my mom and she's actually moving in with us. So super happy about that. If you aren't following me on Instagram yet, make sure you are following me. It's at Remember Love Healing. And there you can just simply follow along on the journey. I'm going to try to document as much as possible. And I'm, again, really excited about even spending Christmas in the States. I haven't seen Christmas in the States in a really long time. Okay, so if you see me looking to the side, I'm looking over at my notes if you're watching me on YouTube. Again, if you're not watching me on YouTube, you can go ahead and follow me at Remember Love Healing. Just simply type it in on YouTube. And there I do offer not only my podcast on screen, but you could also have some healing music and some notes that I do record outside of this podcast. So it's just a great way to connect. And there's other like-minded individuals, so that's always exciting. And finally, Spilling the Tea Leaves, which is what you're listening to, has their own website. I know, it's super exciting. I'm excited. It's a work in progress. We are going to have some merch. So if you want to support this podcast and would like to have it remain ad-free, please, I ask you to support by just picking up a mug, a shirt, or something, a gift for yourself, a gift to somebody else. I will be having jewelry there as well. So if you have something that you want to see, let me know. All right, so this video that went viral, this is on social media. It originated in TikTok. I'm not even going to share this person's name because A, I don't want to shame, and B, I actually do not want you to look for them because what they were posting was completely irresponsible, and I stand by that. They are actually a makeup artist, and what they were doing, whether they knew what they were doing is another point entirely, but they wanted to show what, for example, ancient Egyptians use as far as makeup. So this person crushed malachite in a, I can never know how to say this, mortar, and they crushed it, applied animal lard, and then placed it on their eyelids. But they went a step further and also added water to this mixture. And the color was, of course, beautiful because malachite does have a beautiful color. It has been known that a lot of these ancient figures, especially in Egypt, use gemstones, crushed gemstones, and applied it as makeup. But there's a reason why we don't do that anymore, right? There's a high toxicity level to these gemstones that, although are very pretty, are very hazardous to our health. I mean, you can say, well, back in the 1800s, they were putting cocaine in Coca-Cola, so it's just natural. It's good. We can go back to that. Or they had very toxic carcinogens in makeup, and they had lead in makeup and lead in paint. So the word is stupid to do these old techniques, because now we know better. We know it's toxic. Now we know it shouldn't go on our skin. But if you're going to do it for the clout and a TikTok video, this is probably one of the dumbest things I have ever seen in a long time. And it's something that I do preach about a lot, is while we are more inclined to a natural approach, a holistic approach, on an energetic level. I believe in the energy of crystals. I also believe in doing it in a very ethical manner, meaning don't stop taking your meds. Continue going to your doctor. Don't drink these crystal elixirs with these random stones because they have certain properties or intentions, and absolutely do not crush gemstones unless you know what you're doing. And definitely don't do it for the internet, because why would you risk your health? Anyways, so the reason I'm not sharing this person's video is because there are those who are just coming into this that are not very familiar with the background on stones. And I was happy to see that a lot of the people that responded to that video were generally saying, I cannot believe you're doing this. That's so toxic. You're doing harm to yourself and potentially to others, because others are going to try to replicate this idea. Her response was, well, unless some scientist comes to my page and proves me otherwise, or I want to try some makeup from the 19 or 1800s, I'm just going to keep it up. And she did. It's still there, unfortunately, racking up views. So we're absolutely supporting that incredibly irresponsible behavior. So I did want to take this episode to talk about the toxicity of some crystals. While we are under the assumption that anything that comes to us is generally safe, I am going to be the person to burst your bubble, because no, just because a stone is in your space does not necessarily mean it is safe. And when I say safe, I mean physically safe to touch, to feel, to drink. I just recently did a blog post on crystal elixirs on my website at rememberlovehealing.com, and I gave some recipes, right? Of course, always under the assumption that you should be aware of what you're allergic to. If you feel like you might be allergic to something, just do it safely, do your research. And a lot of the stones that I recommended are high on the Mohs scale, which is the Mohs scale just tells you how fragile the stone is. For example, a diamond is very, very high, while something like selenite or desert quartz like this can be very, very low, because once you scratch it, the powder comes off. Now, this is for a crystal elixir that you can spray around. You're not ingesting anything. It's being sprayed around in your atmosphere. And this is what I usually recommend. I know there are a lot of water bottles, for example, that are being sold that have the gemstone like rose quartz, amethyst, citrine, or quartz. And the actual stone is touching the water that you're ingesting. Now, when you see this, I want you to be very hyper aware of what you are purchasing. Now, as a business owner, I can tell you that there are a lot of shops, especially that are located in China, that are not following safety protocols. And they are pushing these items out that might have very toxic glue that they're used to attach the stone. The base of the stone might have a glue that's very highly toxic, I guess is the only word that I can think for human ingestion. And I've seen them being sold. I've seen other crystal sellers, other holistic storage or new age stores just purchasing these items in bulk from these wholesalers in China, putting it in their shop and then selling it to the person that thinks this is so cool. I saw this on Instagram. I want to purchase it. Now, there is no regulation for these items. These items are being brought in, put on a shelf, and sold. If it was something else, it was makeup, for the most part, there is some sort of inspection that happens or testing that occurs, sometimes, not all the times, or food, for example. But these items are not regulated in the least. So items like these water bottles that are being sold for you to ingest can be potentially dangerous for your health and for parents like us, for your children, because they might take a sip of your water bottle and their bodies are still developing and growing. Now, in this particular example, malachite is safe to wear. When malachite is made into jewelry, it is polished, so it is safe to wear on your skin. There are people that argue that potentially sweating, you might have this stone or the remnants go into your body, but a lot of the jewelry stones or malachite stones are polished to the point that there is no residue that's coming off. The dangers of malachite come in its raw form, especially when you're cutting or polishing, or in the case of the viral video, grinding it. These are the dust particles that we are inhaling that are extremely toxic to our respiratory system. The reason being is that malachite is composed mainly of copper 2 oxide, and this causes respiratory distress. If you ever see a professional, a lapidary professional, a jeweler that is working with malachite, they will always wear protective gear, full-on glasses, a respiratory mask. They're on it, not an N95 mask. I'm talking about those like heavy duty rubber things that go on your face that has its own ventilation. Now, copper 2 oxide is extremely toxic to humans. Some of the symptoms might include muscle ache, nausea. You start tasting like a metallic or sweet taste. You experience weakness, exhaustion, upper respiratory distress, irritation of the eyes. Like, it's a whole thing, right? The fact that I just see this woman applying it to her eyeballs is insane. And then bonus points, it's even more toxic when water is mixed to it. So a jeweler or a lapidary will work with malachite, have the respiratory protection, and they would polish it with water in order for the dust not to fly all over the place, right? But they will never touch the malachite mixed with water because it can go into your skin. Now, one of the things that malachite does do is it increases your chances of Wilson's disease. Now, Wilson's disease is a hereditary disease, but it is a mutation of a gene, specifically ATP7B gene. I'm telling you guys, I did my research for this, so you don't have to, at least for these pieces, but whenever you're working with a stone or you have the urge for whatever reason to grind it, do your research. Now, this is a rare genetic disease, but it is an accumulation of copper in the liver and other vital organs. So now if you're working with malachite, you are increasing the odds of triggering that disease and increasing the odds of ingesting copper, when in a regular setting, we would not be doing that. Now, there is no cure for this. So I have seen creatives, and I love watching creatives create. There's one particular one that that comes to mind that grinds all these stones so then it could be inlaid in resin or in paints, and they do projects on paint jobs for motorcycles. And I see it clearly. For some reason I've lost them on my Instagram, but I followed them for a long time. And these particular people do take the proper precautions, but then I saw others trying to imitate. Imitate is the sincerest form of flattery, right? So they're imitating them and doing the same thing with these stones, but not knowing the background or the history of the person. The person is a professional. They've worked with stones their entire lives. They just thought that they can imitate it and do such a thing. And it causes problems. Like on top of that, when you're polishing, all this dust comes to you, you're wearing it, you walk into your home and then are exposing your family, and then you're selling these items to other with an improperly made item. Another stone that you should be very aware of is pyrite and lapis lazuli, however you pronounce it. I always say lazuli. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I've ever heard another person say that word. It's these words that are in my head, and I'm like, this is just the way I read it. Now, I pair these together because the golden flecks in lapis lazuli is actually pyrite. And some of you know that pyrite, when exposed to water, can be toxic, especially when it's in water for a long period of time. So this is one of the reasons why you don't recommend drinking a crystal elixir with these two stones. Now, like malachite, these stones are safe to wear. The jewelry has been made with them for hundreds of years. Cleopatra did use this as eyeshadow. Not very recommended. I'm pretty sure she was gorgeous, but didn't have a very long lifeline. Now, according to Robert Barry Finkelman, he's a professor on medical geology from the University of Texas. I didn't know medical geology was even a thing. This is a newer field of science that I am so into. But he says that pyrite is probably one of the most dangerous minerals on Earth. He studied China's Guizhou province. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. Guizhou province, where thousands were suffering from arsenic poisoning. He found that when it started getting cold, people would start bringing coal into their homes. The coal is then used to warm up their food over an open fire, leading people to breathe in the fumes from these fires. But not only that, now the food has absorbed some of these fumes that are laced with arsenic, resulting in a lot of health problems in that province in China. Now, this leads to carcinoma, which are malignant tumors, not only on their skin, but in their internal organs. Now, after studying the coal composition, he found pyrite in the coal, and he says, in fact, pyrite binds arsenic in coals. When coal burns, pyrite is oxidized, thus releasing arsenic. For instance, the occupational lung disease of miners is caused by pyrite. Pyrite is a main source of acid gases in the atmosphere. Therefore, I considered pyrite the most dangerous mineral for human health. I'm going to link his study below so you can take a look at it. You can read further if you want to do further research on your own. And this is why you should just absolutely be careful when drinking these elixirs that can be devastating to your health. I had a friend a few years ago she started getting into crystals, and she sent me a picture of this health spa. And this health spa, of course, is jumping on what is considered trendy and had these crystal elixirs. And I see what they did. They just grabbed whatever crystals they had around, stuck it in water, and then put it in a really nice display and served it to its customers. And within that was calcite, which you should never put in water for ingestion. They had lapis lazuli, and they had rose quartz, and amethyst, which are generally safe, but I still don't recommend it, particularly quartz, but I'm going to get into that in a minute. Another stone, for example, is cinnabar. And cinnabar is often used in art, and it's really popular. It was really popular in South America. And they would make vases and jewelry boxes. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. It is this reddish, very burnt orange stone. And the reason it's dangerous is because of its high mercury content. Once it's worked through, there is minimal exposure. The exposure is limited. They made jewelry out of it. I'm sure a parent, a grandparent has had one of these pieces in their home. Now, although it's still used, cinnabar is still used as part of traditional Chinese medicines. Now, if you know, mercury is very, very highly toxic. But the key here, so like I said, they use it in traditional Chinese medicines. But the key is that when you ingest it, it does have a sedative effect. But in the gastrointestinal tract, mercury cannot be absorbed. But it does accumulate in the kidneys. So after a long-term exposure, you do start having renal dysfunction. So this is one of those stones that we know it has mercury content. It's also used in medicine. It's also used in art. But we don't see the effects right away until it's too late and you're already having kidney problems. Heating cinnabar is toxic because the stone releases toxic mercury vapors that then we're inhaling and getting ourselves incredibly sick. This leads me to my next point. So I've talked about some stones that are poisonous or not healthy for you and toxic. There's tons more. I'm actually going to link this website that I found. I believe it's a GUA. Is it? I'll double check. But I'll link it, and it does have a list of toxic stones, and then you can do your own research based on that, right? But we talked about toxic stones. We talked about a little bit about the crystal elixir, but there's something that a lot of us are not talking about, and these are the pipes, the smoking pipes or smoke pipes. A lot of them are used for smoking tobacco. Others use it for smoking marijuana, however you say it. English is not my first language. Okay, leave me alone. Marijuana. And they're super popular. I've seen them everywhere. But a lot of these are coming again from these places in China that have absolutely no safety protocol. Now, I am not aware of if there are any safety protocols to smoking accessories, but the reason why these are so dangerous is, like cinnabar, a lot of these stones release these toxic chemicals when they're heated. And what are you doing when you're smoking? You are heating the stone. There's also the probability of improper polishing. So items like quartz, for example, silica is very traumatic to your lungs. It causes respiratory distress. It causes scratches within your lungs. And if you are purchasing something that has this residue on it and then you smoke it, you're causing internal damage to your respiratory system. Cracks where bacteria can live are a huge thing. Especially when you're putting the piece in your mouth and there is a unpolished part or a crack, that can be harmful to your health, your mouth health. There has to be a better word than mouth health. I can't think of it right now. I'm sure there is. Some of these suppliers have unlisted polishes or sealers, leaving harsh chemicals on the inside of the pipes as well as the outside. Again, I'm telling you this because there's absolutely no regulations to any resellers in China, especially. Where is my phone? Because I'm going to show you something. There is no regulation to these items. And when I say there are hundreds of sellers of gemstones in China, some of them that are absolutely unethical, some who are absolutely just after your dollar. I'm speaking from experience because I have seen them firsthand. Now, if you go on I don't know if you can see this, but I have tons of resellers, and this is after I deleted hundreds of them. So I'm pretty good right now. I'm up to 3 weeks. Wanting me to purchase, wanted me to participate in their live sales. Yeah, you can see them working in the background in the most unhygienic of spaces. You can see them. I've seen them abusing their workers. I've seen them dip the items in unknown sealants. There's actually a documentary on Netflix called, I think it's called Money. I have to double check. But this is just an example. And there are these resellers of inauthentic goods. So makeup palettes that are really, really popular, especially when you can't get them. They're limited edition. They recreate these items and they put trash. I just had an image of one of them picking up the oil from a restaurant grease traps, and then repurposing it and putting it in makeup and all these awful things. And then they come and sell it to you. And people are putting it on their faces and it's causing reactions, especially if you have sensitive skin. One of the stones that I have seen, it's tiger's eye. And now tiger's eyes contains asbestos when it's not properly polished or sealed, and you guys are smoking it. So you have to be really, really careful with what you are ingesting. If you ask for my recommendation, you can receive the full benefits of the crystal healing, the energies, and its properties simply by laying it on you, wearing it in jewelry. If you want to do a crystal elixir and place it in water, it is to spray around your home, and you have lost a crystal. That crystal just stays in the water forever. We're not using it again. Crystals that are in water bottles, if you feel inclined to use it, find one that the stone is not actually touching the water. There's some that they're almost encapsulated inside another glass dome inside the water bottle, or a bottom that you can see the crystals, but the water and the crystals don't touch. Your crystals don't have to touch the water. Fun fact. So you can absolutely make your own crystal elixir if you put your water bottle and set it underneath on top of a stone or a flat stone. You're good to go. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to touch the water. It doesn't have to be constantly exposed. I actually have a flat rose quartz piece where I lay my water bottle on like a coaster. You can even set it up the night before so it can have full nights of intention, and you're good to go with your water. So the stone does not need to touch the water. You are causing more risk than there are benefits to it. If you are one of those who have followed other people and feel that the risk is minimal, while you may feel awesome and young now, the repercussions when you're older and your body can't metabolize a lot of these toxins that you're ingesting, you're going to regret it, right? So try to minimize your exposure, still work with these stones in a way that is healthy for you, in a way that is safe, and not in a manner where you are exposing yourself to potential problems down the road. I hope you found this podcast useful, this episode useful. For the most part, I like to talk about other happy things, but I felt like this was one that I absolutely had to touch on, especially if you have seen it on social media and you feel inclined to try it yourself. Just don't. L'Oreal has great eyeshadows. You don't need to try malachite. You don't need to ingest anything. MAC has some really good lipstick. I just bought some. They were having a sale. You don't need to channel Cleopatra and her makeup tips and techniques. You wouldn't do that with your grandmother's tips and techniques or her makeup style. You don't have to do it with Cleopatra. So I hope you love the episode. You can find me online at rememberlovehealing.com. You can learn more about this podcast at spillingthetealeaves.com. Visit our sponsors there. Purchase some merch to support the podcast and keep it as ad-free as possible. Please follow me on Instagram, Remember Love. Oh, yeah, and this podcast is its own Instagram page, so I am building it and putting content. Yeah, so you can follow Spilling the Tea Leaves at Spilling the Tea Leaves podcast on Instagram. Love and light, and I will see you next time. Bye.